I thought I knew my wife. After all, we had spent nearly 4 years together. We had our routines, our rituals, the unspoken agreements that came with being married. I knew what made her laugh, what made her tick, what she liked to eat, and how she took her coffee. I thought I understood the ebb and flow of our relationship, the little dynamics that made us, us. But on that night, the night of our anniversary, I realized how wrong I was. It started innocuously enough. The evening was meant to be a simple celebration. A quiet dinner, just the two of us, in a cozy restaurant we'd been to once before. Nothing extravagant. Nothing that screamed, life-changing moment. I wore my usual outfit, a button-up shirt, jeans, nothing too flashy. She, on the other hand, looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. There was a sense of distance in her beauty that night, a sense of perfection I couldn't quite place. It was as if she had slipped into a role that was no longer entirely hers. I hadn't thought much of it at first. The dinner was good, the wine even better, but then came the moment that shifted everything. After we'd finished the main course, she leaned back in her chair and smiled at me, that knowing smile, the one she reserved for moments when she had something planned. I wasn't prepared for what came next. She raised her glass, a perfectly poised gesture, and my heart skipped a beat. The entire room seemed to pause in the background, as if time itself were holding its breath. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice steady and calm. "And to the new rules for my husband." I froze. Her friends, who had been silently watching us from their corner of the room, erupted in laughter. It wasn't the kind of laughter that felt like a joke. It felt forced, as if they all shared some unspoken secret I wasn't privy to. The atmosphere around me shifted in a way that was so subtle, yet so sharp, that it made my palms sweat. My mind raced to process what had just been said. New rules? What did that even mean? We hadn't talked about any rules. Was she serious? New rules for me? I asked, a smile stretched awkwardly across my face. I was trying to keep it light, trying to mask the unease bubbling up inside me. But she didn't respond immediately. She just stared at me, those familiar eyes now glowing with a cold, calculated intensity that I hadn't seen before. She didn't laugh, didn't even blink. She just waited, as if daring me to react. Her friends, on the other hand, were still chuckling, but their smiles no longer seemed warm. They seemed almost predatory. I felt like the walls were closing in. "Maybe you'll understand soon enough," she said finally, lowering her glass, the clink of it against the table far louder than it should have been. "But for now, let's just say, things are about to get interesting." The room seemed to close in on me as my mind raced to catch up. What was going on? Was she joking? Was this part of some weird game I didn't know about? I glanced at her friends, looking for some kind of confirmation, some kind of answer. But they were all staring at me, their eyes now filled with something that almost felt like expectation. I laughed nervously, still unsure of what was happening. All right, new rules it is," I said, trying to keep the mood light, but I could feel a knot tightening in my stomach. Then, just as quickly as it had all started, Olivia stood up, her movements graceful, deliberate. She didn't look at me when she did it, though. She only glanced at the table, her gaze drifting over her friends as she said, "We need to get to the real fun now, don't you think?" I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I watched her turn towards the rest of the group. She didn't look at me once more. The smile she gave them wasn't a smile of love or warmth. It was something else. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Let's make it official," she said, and then it happened. Her friends stood up too, one by one. Everything in me screamed to question her, to demand an explanation. But I stayed silent. The room was spinning too fast now, and the words I needed to say wouldn't form. I could barely comprehend what was unfolding in front of me. Olivia's voice broke through the noise in my head, and I couldn't escape the chill in her tone. "You'll understand soon enough, Eric. I promise you." The next few moments felt like a blur. The room was filled with a strange energy, one that I had never felt before. I could feel the tension rising, thick and suffocating, but my mind couldn't catch up to what was happening. My thoughts were still too slow, too distant, too confused. And then, in a split second, everything changed. The laughter stopped. The smiles disappeared. The faces around me, Olivia's, her friends, all of them, turned serious. Deadly serious. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a toast. This wasn't just a joke. This was something far bigger. And for the first time that night, I wished I hadn't been so quick to trust. I didn't know how to respond. I sat there, frozen, as Olivia turned her back to me and whispered something to her friends. I could barely hear the words, but the way they moved together, the way they exchanged glances, it felt rehearsed. Everything in the air was wrong. The hum of the restaurant seemed too loud now, the lights too bright, and the laughter of her friends suddenly felt like a performance. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, I could feel the unease spreading. The tension in the air wasn't normal. Olivia turned back to me. Her eyes, those eyes I thought I knew, were filled with something that I couldn't place. It wasn't love, it wasn't warmth. It was something colder, sharper. I wasn't sure what she was planning, but I was starting to suspect it wasn't something I was going to like. Let's not drag this out, Olivia said, her voice unusually calm, almost like she was talking to a stranger. You've been living under a misconception, Eric. About everything. About us. About what you thought we were. I felt my heart race. Misconception? What was she talking about? Our marriage? My mind spun in confusion, but the more I tried to grasp onto any rational thought, the more I felt like I was sinking. She didn't let me speak. She just kept talking, the words flowing from her lips like they had been planned for weeks, months maybe. I've been patient. I've been waiting for you to catch on, but you never did. So, now I'm taking matters into my own hands. Her voice dropped lower. It's time for you to face the truth. At that moment, I couldn't breathe. The way she spoke felt like a slap, like everything I thought I knew about her was being ripped away in front of me. My thoughts were swirling, racing, and I still couldn't grasp what was happening. Her friends didn't make a sound, just watching her, waiting. You're not the man I thought you were, Olivia continued. You're weak, Eric. You've been living in a fantasy. It's time for you to wake up. Every word she said felt like a blade cutting deeper. I felt a wave of anger rise within me, but also fear. Fear of what she was capable of, fear of what I might have missed, of what I had allowed to happen. I'm not weak, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. My hands trembled on the table, and I could feel the eyes of her friends burning into me. Olivia's lips curled into a small, cold smile. Prove it then. For the first time, I didn't know what to do. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I understood, was someone entirely different. And what terrified me more than anything was that I didn't know if I was ready to confront what she was revealing. Are you ready to face reality, Eric? She asked, her voice now laced with something more dangerous than before. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Then, without another word, Olivia turned and walked toward the other side of the room. The energy in the room shifted again, but this time, it wasn't the nervous energy I had felt before. This was something darker, something I couldn't control. Her friends followed her. There was no more laughter, no more pretense, just an unsettling silence that I couldn't escape. I stood up, but before I could take a step, Jade, one of Olivia's closest friends, grabbed my arm. Stay where you are, Eric, she said in a tone that made my blood run cold. You're not ready for this. I looked around the table. No one was smiling anymore. No one seemed to care about the dinner, about the anniversary. It was as if the celebration had ended the moment Olivia made that toast. Everything felt wrong, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't figure out why, but something told me that if I didn't face whatever was happening right now, I would never understand it. Olivia was standing with her friends now, in a tight circle. They were whispering, exchanging looks. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the way they moved, the way they spoke, it was as if I was no longer a part of the picture. I wanted to go to her, to demand answers, but my legs felt like lead. I couldn't move. And then Olivia turned back to me, and for the first time that night, her eyes softened, just for a second. It was a brief moment, one I almost missed. But I saw it. It was pity. I had never seen that look from her before. Never. I don't think you'll ever be able to fix this, she said, her voice strangely soft, like she was talking to a child. But you can try if you want. I'm not stopping you. The way she said it made my blood run cold. Try? Try what? Before I could say another word, Olivia walked out of the room. Her friends followed her, leaving me standing there, paralyzed by confusion and fear. I could hear the soft murmur of voices as they moved away, but all I could do was stare at the empty space they had left behind. And just like that, I realized everything I thought I knew about my wife, about our life together, was a lie. I stood there, completely frozen, my mind racing in a million different directions. What had just happened? 1 minute, we were having dinner like any other night, and the next, my wife was talking to me like I was a stranger. The sudden shift in her demeanor, the coldness in her voice, was like a slap to my face, and it left me reeling. I glanced around the table. Everyone had gone silent, their eyes locked on me with an intensity that was almost suffocating. Jade, Olivia's closest friend, was still holding my arm, her grip firm, as though she was waiting for something. "Do you understand now, Eric?" Jade asked, her voice soft but laced with something I couldn't quite place. Pity, maybe? Or was it amusement? "I don't know what's happening," I stammered, trying to pull my arm away from her. But she didn't let go. "You're not supposed to. Not yet anyway," she said, her eyes narrowing. "But you will. Soon." I didn't understand. I was so confused, trapped in this whirlwind of emotions that seemed to change every second. What was Olivia trying to do? What did she mean by new rules for me? Why were her friends involved in this? The questions swirled in my head, each one more urgent than the last, but I couldn't find the answers. Jade finally let go of my arm, and I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. I glanced toward the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of Olivia, but she was gone. I couldn't hear her voice anymore, just the murmur of her friends as they gathered in the back room. I needed to talk to her. I needed to understand what was happening, what she had meant by those words. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't sit still anymore. But I stayed where I was, paralyzed, watching the others slowly get up from the table. They moved deliberately, with purpose, like they were waiting for something to happen. Jade was the last to stand, and she looked at me with a strange mix of sympathy and something else, something darker. "Don't bother trying to follow her," Jade said, her voice low. "She's made her decision, Eric. You're not in control here anymore." Her words hit me like a punch. What did she mean by that? Olivia had made her decision? I stood up suddenly, the chair scraping against the floor. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, my voice rising. Jade didn't flinch. She just watched me with those cold eyes, her expression unreadable. "You'll find out soon enough," she said, and then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the back room where Olivia and the others had gone. I was left standing there, utterly alone, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a bad omen. I didn't know what to do, where to go, or even what I was supposed to feel. But one thing was clear. My marriage, the life I thought I understood, had just been shattered. I wanted to chase after Olivia, to demand answers, to force her to tell me what she meant by everything she said. But the fear, the uncertainty, and the feeling that I was walking into something I wasn't prepared for kept me rooted to the spot. I glanced around the room, half expecting someone to step forward and explain it all, but no one did. The silence was deafening. I took a deep breath and walked toward the back room, my legs unsteady beneath me. I had no plan, no idea what I was walking into, but I knew I couldn't sit there and do nothing. I reached the door and hesitated for a moment, my hand resting on the cold metal handle. What if I wasn't ready for what I'd find behind that door? What if I couldn't face the truth? But then, I remembered Olivia's last words. "You'll understand soon enough." With a deep breath, I turned the handle and stepped inside. I stepped into the back room, heart pounding in my chest, the air thick with anticipation. The low murmur of voices hit me first, Olivia's and the others. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but this wasn't it. The room was dimly lit, the heavy curtains drawn shut, casting shadows across the faces of Olivia and her friends. They were standing in a small circle, speaking in hushed tones. But when the door creaked open, every single one of them turned toward me, their eyes locking on me like they were waiting for something, waiting for me to break. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Olivia was standing at the center of the group, her posture rigid, her arms crossed, like she was the leader of some strange, secret meeting. Her friends flanked her, but they weren't just there. They were watching me, scrutinizing every move I made, like they knew something I didn't. "What the hell is going on, Olivia?" I managed to force the words out, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "What did you mean by those new rules?" Olivia didn't respond right away. She just stood there, looking at me like I was an insect under a magnifying glass. The silence between us was suffocating, and the longer it stretched, the more my confusion turned to frustration. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but clear. "You never did get it, did you? She tilted her head, a cruel smile playing at the corners of her lips. The way you've been living your life, the way you've been in this marriage, it was never really about us, Eric. It was about you. I blinked, trying to process her words. What does that mean? I asked, my voice cracking. I thought we had a good life, Olivia. I thought we were happy. Olivia stepped forward, closing the distance between us. You were happy, yes, but only because you were blind. I kept things easy for you, let you believe that everything was fine. But I've been waiting for this moment, Eric. For the moment when you would stop pretending. I felt my stomach drop. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. She had been playing a game, and I had been too naive to see it. Pretending, I whispered. What the hell do you mean? One of her friends, a woman with short dark hair, stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with a strange, almost predatory light. You were never the one in control, she said, her voice laced with a quiet venom. None of you men are. You just don't know it yet. I looked around at the group, my mind spinning. What is this? Some sort of joke? Olivia stepped even closer, her voice soft but cold. No joke, Eric. This is the reality you've been avoiding. I felt my breath catch as her words sank in. Reality? What reality? My mind raced, trying to piece together what they were saying, but nothing made sense. I had always thought our relationship was built on trust, love, mutual respect. But now, it felt like everything had been a carefully constructed illusion, a facade designed to keep me in the dark. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? Olivia's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. I've been doing this for years, Eric. Keeping you comfortable, keeping you in line. But now, the game's over. And it's time for you to face the consequences. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Consequences? What had I done to deserve this? What had I missed? I had been blind, yes, but I had never imagined that my wife could be capable of something like this. The woman I had trusted, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was now someone I didn't recognize. Come on, Olivia, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. You're scaring me. What's going on? But Olivia didn't seem to care. She didn't show an ounce of sympathy, just cold calculation. She glanced at her friends, and they all nodded in unison, like they were ready for whatever came next. I think it's time we show Eric exactly how things are going to work now, Olivia said, her voice dripping with finality. No more pretending. No more rules for him to follow. It's time for him to understand where he truly stands. I stood there, paralyzed, my heart racing. The woman I had married had become someone unrecognizable. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the walls pressing in tighter with each passing second. What were they going to do? What was their plan? I wanted to scream, to run, to demand answers. But I couldn't move. I was trapped, surrounded by people I thought I knew, but who now felt like strangers. Olivia stepped closer again, her eyes locking onto mine with a cold intensity. This is your reality now, Eric, she whispered, her voice low and steady. And you will obey the rules, whether you like it or not. I couldn't breathe. My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of everything that was happening, but nothing fit together. Olivia stood there, her face expressionless, like she was watching me unravel piece by piece, enjoying every second of it. You don't understand, do you? She asked, her voice dripping with disdain. This isn't about love, Eric. This is about control. And you've never been in control. I took a step back, my legs feeling weak beneath me. Control? Was she saying our entire marriage was a manipulation? Every word, every gesture, every kiss. Was it all a lie? My stomach churned at the thought. I trusted you. I whispered, barely able to hear my own voice over the rush of blood in my ears. I thought we had something real. Olivia's eyes softened for just a second, but it was only a fleeting moment. She quickly masked it with a cold smile. You never had anything real, Eric. Not in the way you think. You were part of the game. My game. The words hit me like a slap. I had been a pawn. But how long had she been playing this game? And why? Was I just a means to an end, or was there something bigger happening that I couldn't even begin to understand? Her friends stood silently in the background, watching this entire exchange unfold, like spectators to some twisted show. I could feel their eyes on me, studying me, waiting for me to break. I've been patient, Eric, Olivia continued, taking a small step closer. I've waited for you to see what I've been doing, but you never did. You were too blind, too complacent. It was easier for me to control you than to let you in on the truth. I shook my head, a part of me still unable to fully accept what was happening. No, no, this doesn't make sense. You've been lying to me? For years? Olivia didn't flinch. She didn't even look regretful. In fact, she seemed almost satisfied. Lying? I don't lie. I manipulate. There's a difference. The words sent a chill through me. I felt my chest tighten, my hands clammy. I had been living in a reality that wasn't even mine. She had been pulling the strings, and I hadn't even known it. I'm done with this. I spat, the frustration finally bubbling over. I had to leave. I had to get out of here before I completely lost myself. I turned to the door, but before I could take a step, Jade was suddenly in front of me, blocking my path. Don't even think about it, she said, her voice low and firm. You can't walk away from this, Eric. Not now. I tried to push past her, but she grabbed my arm, her grip tighter than I expected. Let go of me, I shouted, my voice breaking as I struggled against her. I think you should hear Olivia out, Jade said, her eyes cold. It's too late for you to run. You're already in this deeper than you think. My pulse raced. I could feel my throat tightening as I tried to breathe. I looked back at Olivia, desperate for something, anything that resembled the woman I once knew. But all I saw now was a stranger, a woman who had carefully and methodically torn apart everything I believed in. You're not going anywhere, Eric, Olivia said, her voice cold but confident. You're going to stay, and you're going to listen. And when you're done listening, maybe you'll finally understand. I wanted to scream, to break free, but something in me knew that if I left now, I would never get the answers I needed. I had no choice but to stay. For the first time, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my reality, it was all crumbling before me. I'll stay, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. But you better tell me everything. Right now. Olivia's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. Good, she said, her voice almost sweet. It's time for you to learn the truth. The real truth. I stood there, feeling every ounce of my strength draining away, like a balloon deflating. Olivia's words had shattered everything I thought I knew, but there was something more, something darker, in the way she was looking at me now. The coldness in her eyes was unbearable, as if she had already written me off. But I wasn't going to leave without answers. I'm listening, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Tell me, what's the truth, Olivia? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a step back, giving me a long, calculating look, as if she were assessing whether I was truly ready for whatever she was about to say. Her friends remained silent, their expressions unreadable, but I could feel their eyes boring into me, waiting for me to break. Olivia finally spoke, her voice low and deliberate. I've always known you were weak, Eric. You were easy to manipulate, but I didn't do it just for fun. It was necessary. You think you've been living a normal life, but nothing about our marriage was normal. Her words hit like a sledgehammer. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Was this some kind of twisted game? A test? Was she trying to break me? You see, Eric, she continued, I never wanted a traditional marriage. I never wanted a partner who just followed the rules, who didn't question things. I wanted someone who would do exactly what I told them, who would fall in line and never ask why. And you were perfect for that. I felt the blood drain from my face as her words sank in. Was she telling me that everything, the love, the moments we shared, the life we built together, had been a lie? Are you saying that everything was fake? I asked, barely able to form the words. Olivia's lips curled into a small, cold smile. Not fake, just controlled. You were never really with me, Eric. You were always just following my lead, doing what I wanted when I wanted. I took a step back, my head spinning. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be happening. How could the woman I loved, who I thought loved me in return, say something like this? Her friends stepped forward then, one by one, surrounding me. Each of them wore the same cold expression, as though they were part of this plan, as though they had all been involved from the very beginning. This isn't just about you and Olivia, said one of them, a tall woman with dark eyes. Her voice was smooth, almost seductive. It's about a lot more than that. You see, Olivia wasn't the only one controlling things. We all played our part. I turned toward her, my mind reeling, but before I could respond, another woman, Jade, the one who had been the most forceful, stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Don't you get it, Eric?" she asked, her voice dripping with frustration. "This was never about your happiness. This was about power, control. You never asked the right questions, and now, we're all here to make sure you understand what happens when you don't." I felt my breath catch in my throat. What was I hearing? What were they saying? I had been blind to all of it. How could I have been so oblivious? How could I have not seen that everything around me was orchestrated? Olivia took a step forward then, her gaze piercing. "You always thought you were the one making the decisions, Eric. But I've been making them for you. You just never realized it. The dinners, the vacations, even the way we spent our nights together. Everything was a carefully planned act." I couldn't process it. I stood there, unable to speak, unable to move, as the weight of her words crushed me. "You thought we were equals, didn't you?" Olivia's voice was quiet, almost mocking now. "But that was never the case. I was always the one in charge. And now, you're finally going to see what happens when you refuse to understand that." The room seemed to close in on me. I could feel the suffocating pressure of their gaze, the way they were all waiting for me to break, waiting for me to react. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to fight back. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed by the sheer weight of what I was hearing. "I don't know what to believe anymore," I muttered, my voice hoarse. "I don't know who you are." Olivia stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You don't need to believe anything, Eric. The truth doesn't require belief. It just is." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And now you're going to understand what that truth means for you." I looked at the faces of her friends. No warmth, no sympathy, just cold, calculating expressions. This was a game to them. And I was the pawn, the fool who had been too blind to see it until now. But what did she mean by understanding the truth? What was she going to do? My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. "What happens now?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Olivia's smile was the last thing I saw before the world around me went dark. The world spun. I couldn't focus on anything. My thoughts were a blur, my chest tight with panic. Olivia's words echoed in my mind like a drumbeat, growing louder and louder, drowning out everything else. I tried to move, tried to say something, but it felt like my body was frozen. The darkness was closing in, and I couldn't escape it. I blinked, trying to clear my head, but the room around me was still too dark, too still. The air felt thick, suffocating. I could hear faint voices, distant whispers, but I couldn't make out the words. It was like being trapped inside my own mind, unable to find the way out. And then, as if the fog lifted, I saw her, Olivia. She was standing in front of me, her face inches from mine, her eyes piercing into me like a dagger. "Welcome back, Eric," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "I hope you've had time to think about everything." I blinked, disoriented. I had no idea what was happening or how I got here. All I could focus on was Olivia. Her cold, calculating gaze sent a shiver down my spine. What did you do to me?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Oh, nothing too terrible," she said, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Just a little reality check. You've been living in a fantasy for far too long." I tried to stand, to move away from her, but my legs felt weak, unsteady. It was as if the ground beneath me wasn't solid, like everything around me was unstable. I took a step back, but Olivia reached out and grabbed my arm with surprising force. "You're not going anywhere, Eric," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Not until you understand what's really happening." I looked around the room again, trying to get my bearings. I was still in the same place, but now it felt different. The dim light that had once seemed comforting now felt suffocating. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I was trapped in this twisted reality she had created. "What is this?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "What do you want from me?" Olivia's lips curled into a smirk, the kind that made my blood run cold. "What do I want? I want you to see the truth, Eric. To understand that you've been living a lie." The room fell silent. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, all of them waiting for me to understand, to break. Her friends were standing in the background, but their expressions were unreadable, like they were just spectators to the game. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. "Why?" I finally managed to say. "Why are you doing this to me?" Olivia stepped closer, her breath cool against my skin. "Because you were never meant to know the truth, Eric. You were never supposed to question. I've given you everything, and you've been content to live in your little bubble. But now, you're going to face the consequences of your ignorance. I shook my head, desperately trying to grasp at something that made sense. But it was all slipping away, like sand through my fingers. I don't understand. I thought you loved me. Her expression darkened. Love? Love is a tool, Eric. A weapon. And I've used it to control you. Don't you see? You were never really part of this. You were just a piece in a much bigger game. The words hit me like a slap. My world had been built on lies, on manipulation. The life I thought I had with Olivia, the marriage I had trusted, everything had been part of her plan. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I couldn't. I was trapped in this room, in this nightmare, with no way out. Now that you're awake, Olivia said, her voice taking on a colder edge, you'll learn what it means to truly be in my world. You'll learn that the rules you've been following were never your own. I stood there, paralyzed, my mind racing as the truth sank in. Olivia had never been the woman I thought she was. And now, everything I knew, everything I believed, was crashing down around me. Let's see how you handle the truth, Eric, Olivia said softly. Because you have no idea what's coming next. I stood there, my heart heavy, overwhelmed by the weight of the truth Olivia had laid before me. Every word she had said echoed in my mind, like the last bits of a shattered reality slowly crumbling. But as much as I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that everything was a lie, I couldn't let myself. Something inside me snapped, a flicker of clarity cutting through the fog of confusion. Olivia had tried to break me, to make me believe that my life was a game, that I was nothing more than a pawn in her carefully constructed world. But I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to let her rewrite everything I had ever believed in. Olivia, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. You can manipulate all you want, but I'm not your puppet. I'm not going to let you control me anymore. Her eyes narrowed as she stepped back, surprised by my sudden defiance. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had been blind to what was happening, yes, but I could see now. The love I thought we had, it wasn't all fake. There were real moments, real feelings. She had twisted them, yes, but that didn't change what I had felt. I took a deep breath and stood taller, facing her. You've tried to make me believe I was weak, but I'm stronger than you think, and I'm not going to play by your rules anymore. The silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. Olivia didn't speak for a long moment, as though trying to decide what to do with this new version of me. But then, something changed in her eyes. It wasn't regret or remorse. It was something different, something almost resigned. You still don't get it, do you? She said, her voice softer now, almost as if she were speaking to herself. You never understood that I only pushed you this far because I wanted to see if you'd ever fight back. I looked at her, confused. What? I thought you were weak, Olivia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought you'd never stand up for yourself. But now, I see something different in you. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. There was no sense of victory in her words, no triumph. Just an acknowledgement of the shift that had happened. A shift I hadn't expected, but was thankful for. You've played your game, I said, my voice calmer now. But I'm done being a part of it. Olivia stepped back, her eyes unreadable for a moment. Then, slowly, she nodded, as if accepting what was happening. The tension in the room faded, replaced by a strange stillness. She didn't try to stop me, didn't try to pull me back into the web she had woven. For the first time, I felt a sense of clarity, like I had taken back control of my own life. Her friends, who had been silent spectators up until this point, began to shift uncomfortably, sensing the change in the air. It was clear that Olivia had no more power over me, no more hold on me. I think, I said, turning toward the door, it's time for me to go. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel the eyes of Olivia and her friends on my back. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of them or the twisted world Olivia had tried to create. When I stepped outside, the night air felt different, fresher, clearer, as though a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The world, my world, was still there, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was truly free. Free from the lies, free from the manipulation, and free from the fear that had held me captive for so long. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if Olivia and I would ever speak again. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I had a future that was mine to shape. I was no longer bound by anyone's rules but my own. And as I walked into the night, I realized that the greatest victory was the one I had won for myself. I was finally free.